Hi, my name is Kaya Ramanpur, and I'm here with the Arlington Council on Aging. Today, Bill Murphy rejoins us on the show to talk about engagement and enrichment as we age. Tune in after the break to find out. Bill, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a while since you've been on.
Right.
What's new? I hear that you are newly retired.
I am 4 months into retirement, still enjoying it.
Wonderful. What have you been doing since you've retired?
Well, one of the things that I always wanted to do, and one of the reasons why I was so happy to retire at the time I did, was to take time to kind of slow down a little bit, look a little deeper into things that were going on, and spend more time on my poetry. I had the opportunity to learn how to write some poetry. So I'm doing that. That's spending my time writing poetry.
So you've been writing. When did you start the writing process? When did you get into writing?
It was actually a very strange kind of process. I happened to be the volunteer coordinator for the Council on Aging for about 15 years. And I got a call from a poet in town here, Jessie Brown, is her name, and she was looking to get 10 senior citizens to join 40 fifth graders at the Audison School to learn how to write poetry. And I said, sure I can. So 10 of us went up, and all these kids and us mingled. And Jessie is up at a little tree pulling words off. And she's telling us that she's convinced us that we're poets. She knocks over a cup of coffee and proceeds to clean up the coffee and continue teaching. And I said, this lady's going to teach us how to be poets. And she did.
So you were doing this all with the 4th and 5th graders?
Right. They were writing, we were writing, and we were helping critique each other's poems.
Oh, and this was your first time really writing?
That was the first time. I'd written a lot, but only discursive kinds of things.
Okay.
I'm sure Sister Mary Holywater in the 3rd grade told me I couldn't write poems. So I never tried writing poetry all through my whole life, and I was in my 60s when I picked this up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something must have sparked an interest in you being in that room with 4th and 5th graders. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think the thing that really sparked me, in fact, I brought a poem today that I wrote at that time. I'm not sure if it was in the class or not. But what the poetry does for me, anyway, is it kind of gives me a focus on something that either happened in the past or is happening in the present, but I stop long enough to kind of absorb it, let it get into my bones, and get it onto a piece of paper.
Okay.
And I had the good fortune of living in East Africa, in Tanzania, for a number of years. And so one of the first poems I wrote, which I'd love to read for you,
Sure.
is a poem called Ugali.
Okay.
Now, ugali is the staple food of East Africa, kind of like potatoes for the Irish or pasta for the Italians.
Okay.
That kind of thing. That's ugali, okay? So this poem goes, Ugali. Immediately and immaculately swept dirt, aroma of hay dripping from recently rained upon thatched roof, this an African hut home. Ugali, a steaming mound of lovingly, laughingly prepared cornmeal, scratchy, firm, hot ball, rolled with the right hand, a concave cup of corn swiped in spicy stewed sauce. Ugali, grainy and coarse, a mushy meal made meaningful in the dark field coarsened hands of a dusky Sukuma woman by careful preparation and conversation. Ugali, a simple, warm welcome.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you for reading that.
My pleasure.
And you said that you lived in East Africa many years ago. And so when did you write this poem?
I wrote this poem February 2013.
Okay.
So I
So
lived
it's
in
some
East
years.
I lived in East Africa from 1971 to 76.
Okay.
But it brings it all back. You know, that's the thing.
Right.
It's amazing. I can smell the smells. I can taste the taste. I can feel the feelings. It's just wonderful. It really helps me to kind of live it again.
Okay.
Not just in the past, though, because it challenges my senses now, so that when
To reimagine and relive
reimagining.
those experiences. I know I can feel the bowl and the warmth of the bowl, and I can imagine what that feels like and must be like as an experience. And I know I'm thinking about the way that you wrote the poem, and it must have been a process for you to reflect on some of those things, to have to recall the warmth, to recall the textures, what it meant, like symbolically, to be in that space, sharing a meal. Do you feel like it makes you sort of reframe things or reconsider, who you were at that point in your life, what you were experiencing?
Yeah, it does a lot of those things almost simultaneously. The thing is, like, I certainly had never particularly thought about this moment in Africa until the word ugali. I think maybe Jessie was mentioning prompts, or she said, think of a food that has meant something to you, and then up pops ugali, and then again, it's that kind of thing. Like, I tend to be kind of a pretty active person, moving along all the time. But by stopping to sit with ugali, then the other stuff comes. If I just take the time to wait and let it come to me, the warmth, and then the important thing is putting it to word. That's the other thing. The writing of the poem is like a discipline to sharpen my life.
So you were talking about the process of focusing and sitting down and recollecting. And I'm curious if that is something that, you have really started to do more since you've started writing your poetry, the reflecting part. Is that something that you've been doing?
I wouldn't say I'm doing the reflecting part. Well, yes and no. In the sense of, like, I always was very much into meditation and stuff. I would start off the day with, 5 or 10 minutes of stuff, just trying to get ready for the day, in a sense. But I'd say what the difference is this is getting to meditate, taking the time to meditate, and then getting the meditation out of my head and onto the paper.
Okay.
So maybe it was a training program to do the meditation originally, and I've probably extended it when I'm actually writing a poem. But it really is key to do the process of writing the poem. It makes a difference.
Right.
The words take on a life of themselves almost, And I've even heard there's a poet that just died, Don Hall, I think is his name. And he said the writing of the words is the important thing. You have to, you have the experiences, you think about them and all that kind of stuff. But the actual writing, the process of writing it, is what gets you to take on the richness and the depth and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
It's, it kind of makes me think of a friend of mine that said to me, we were talking about a whole bunch of different things and everything. And then I said, oh, you mean I have to do something? And she said, yeah, you can't just talk about it. But it's that kind of thing,
Well, I think in this society it's so hard for us to, have that reflective process, but for us to even have tools to be able to express that. I mean, we're not taught how to reflect. We're not taught tools on how to do that. So throughout our life, I think that we can have these experiences, but we don't know how to get them out. And for you to come into your older years and find a tool that works for you, that allows you to do these things, is incredible.
It really is incredible, and it just came out of nowhere in a sense. I just happened to respond to Jesse's call, not thinking it was going to have any effect upon me. But it is true. I've got another poem that's interesting, I think, because this business about noticing things and then taking the time to write them down.
Okay.
Okay, now this other one, actually it's called the Cairn. Now Cairn are those rock markers that you see sometimes at the beach and everything, okay?
The ones that are stacked and balanced?
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, exactly, okay? And they always, even traditionally, were a marker of some sort, you know? So anyway, I was up in Algonquin, walking along the beach, and happened to see this scene that I talk about, and I probably would have walked by it if I hadn't been writing poetry. The Cairn. The old woman wobbles gingerly onto the craggy main ridge, a tightrope walker, tottering purposefully toward the cairn, a spot marked sacred by a pile of rocks. Emboldened by longevity, she kicks over the cairn, pushing rocks with foot and hand, clearing a sacred space of her own. She plops down, awaits the serenity breezing off the horizon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can picture this woman in my mind just knocking over these precariously balanced rocks that you know somebody took the time to balance and to make their own space. That's incredible.
Yeah, 'cause that was what struck me too. Like, I would never knock over a cairn.
Yeah, right?
Knocking over sacred space or something, you know. But she knocked it over. And I love the line, emboldened by longevity. That was the thunder. How did this woman have the brass to kick over this cairn, you know? But she did, and she sat there and waited for the breeze to come in. And like I say, it's an actual, I was watching her do this, see, so it wasn't made up in my mind, you know, it was just, and I don't, like I say, I don't know whether it would have struck me if I hadn't been writing poetry, because, you know, one of the things that happens is you start taking down words and things in booklets, you know, you write them down when they happen, and then you go back later and sit with it, and suddenly something starts happening, and you kind of start writing it, and then you have to rewrite it, and it's a process, you know, but it's it's fun, it's hard, it's discipline, but it's very, very rewarding. It just feels rich. Yeah.
How would you say that writing has enriched the aging process for you? Enriched your retirement? This time that you have to not stew, but to be able to reflect, to be able to look back on your accomplishments and all you've done, and now you have the time. Like, what does writing do for that process for you?
It really, again, stew isn't a bad thing, and it's a bad word in the sense of there's to stew about something or to be bubbling up in a sense, that kind of a stew, and it's that kind of thing for me so far anyway, and I'm hoping it will do this for the rest of my aging period. It's helping me not just look backward, but definitely looking backward, but also kind of, there's a word that's used, generativity, which is psychologists use it. The idea is, there's stages. And when we get to my stage, the idea is to have something to generate. Not in the sense for other people necessarily, although that's an element of it, because, we all know grandchildren are wonderful, but they don't necessarily listen to grandpa, so you can't be writing, doing anything necessary for us. But what it does do is, for me anyway, it's given me a way to bring together all the things. I've had a rich life, as far as I'm concerned. I've been very blessed in my life, and this is a way of kind of savoring it. in that sense. Wow.
A sort of a tool for appreciation.
Right.
Wow, that's a really wonderful way to look at it. I think so much of our discussion about writing does focus on, reflection on the past and being able to look back on it. But for you, it's really about being able to be in the present. Would you say that's true?
Yes, with the effects of the past being present to me. It's not like trying to go back to the good old days. It's more trying to savor the results of the good old days now.
So it's really the accruement of wisdom. That's what you're wise and you're writing about these experiences.
That's good. That's a wonderful way to describe it. Yeah. Well, I wrote one about my dad too, that I'll share with you, about my dad.
Okay. Was this a recently written poem?
This is a recently written one,
Okay.
And it's, again, it's, I guess, we all think about our parents and stuff at different times, and what is it that we remember? Do we remember what do we remember? And this was a portrait of my father. What's in a name? Buddy. When no one else in the family would, Sonny boy, our Cocker Spaniel would. Come on, buddy, go with poor old Dad. At Engine 29, San Francisco Fire Department, the captain's fellow firefighters were all buddy. A round of golf ended at the 19th hole, sipping a whiskey sour. Hey, buddy, heard any good jokes lately? Rescuing someone, third-story window of a burning Fillmore District building. This Irish-American man calls out to an African-American woman, hey, buddy, give me your hand.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think the thing that, I know the thing that was interesting for me was kind of the progression of the significance of the term. My father did use buddy all the time. It's just like snapshots, progression, times when it occurred. But I think, the various levels from the dog to the 19th hole to the woman needing rescue in the fire, and they were all both the same and different,
That multi-dimensional word. And I think we all have words in our lives that mean different things in different
Do you have
times.
One? Do you have one?
That means something?
Yeah. Do you have one?
I'd have to think about that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
You might have one right at your fingertips.
I might. A word that means different things at different points of my life. It honestly might be, might have to do with my parents as well, and it might be something as simple as like my name and the way that they say my name and what that has meant, right? Yeah. Whenever I think about, my adolescence and how usually in Hispanic cultures we have, like family names, right? So mine wasn't just Kaya, it was Kayacita, and it means like little Kaya, right? And so what that means with my parents and with my grandparents and how I was not Kayacita when I was in trouble, that I was Kaya Rose, or and maybe it's not just a word, but maybe it is the significance of a name and what that context is.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it. Words matter. And how they're used and what they're, what you're trying to convey with them and stuff, And this writing of poetry just reinforces the awareness of, just what can be conveyed in a way or in a tone or in the way it's organized. The other thing that's interesting now as I'm working with Jesse is like different forms and different formats. I just kind of, in a certain sense, write, but it's really amazing how different forms of writing, whether it's a sonnet or all these things, they have the form has a meaning. It's
Absolutely.
it does something that doesn't quite get done in another form, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you said you do a lot of free verse.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular form? Do you prefer free verse over other poems? Are there certain forms you've been experimenting with lately?
I'm terrified of rhyming. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I think that's one of the reasons why I never wrote poetry.
I think many people are
I think
terrified
so.
of rhyming.
I think that's what we only knew to be poetry.
Right.
You know, I mean, when
It has to rhyme.
Yeah, right. And so, you know, if you weren't either spontaneously or whatever that oriented that way, it was like, well, I'm not going to write a poem, you know. But I think this is what we're trying to do. I think is find out what we want to say and then find a way to say that, and in different forms. It's almost like it's like playing games. You know, you get a little in the classes that we have. You know, sometimes we're expected to do lists.
Right.
Other times we're expected, you know, we're asked or challenged to do, you know, different formats and stuff. You know, oh, that's good. But the big thing I think is with Jessie, she's always trying to tell us just, you know, be a poet. Be
a poet.
Be a poet. And so, yeah, and so that gets you through the dark days when you don't feel like you have anything to say.
Do you believe that if you were to start writing at another point in your life, earlier in your life, it would have the same effect? Or do you think that in your older adulthood that you really can appreciate writing?
No, I think it's like the introduction that I had was with fifth graders. So anybody can do it at any stage in their life when they care to do it. I don't know what my poetry would be like now had I started then, but I'm okay. I ain't worrying about that.
Yeah.
I'm just writing.
You just write. And that's all. I mean, once you know, I think it's hard enough to get people at the table to be able to say, hey, we have this tool for you and you can do it. Right. So maybe that is the key, just to write.
Right.
You know?
And like I mean, I've been talking about Jessie Brown. Jessie Brown lives here in town. She teaches this kind of stuff. She's got a website, www.jessiebrown.net. If people are interested of any age, call Jessie.
Any ability. I'm
and
assuming
any ability.
everyone's a poet. Everyone can be a writer.
Right. Because there isn't just, I mean, everybody can talk, everybody can experience, it's just, you know, there's no one way. It's just, you know, taking the time and caring enough about yourself to want to do it.
Sure.
And, you know, and then you've got all this stuff that you can read on television, like I just did.
Which is so wonderful. So thankful to have you on today. Before we sort of start closing, I would like to pose a question to you. One more towards our audiences as well, but if you have any advice about staying engaged in retirement or in the aging process, what sort of advice would you give to our audience today, or to anyone?
Well, the biggest, I guess the biggest thing in our society that interferes with enjoying aging or anything is not taking the time to slow down and do things. I mean, like, you know, I worked at the Council on Aging for all those years. I am amazed at the variety of possibilities that people can have. Forms to engage, Tai Chi, reading clubs, etc. It's there for everybody, you know, but it's hard to believe that I need the senior center because I'm not a senior yet, you know, or what that word is somehow. But really, we all need to care enough about ourselves to find ways. I don't know what the way for me definitely is, this is helpful to me, it's not my only way. But that's, I just say, reach out, find your way. Go to the senior center, hang out, and see what happens. Stay long enough, don't just come in one time. Come, stay, see what happens. If it doesn't happen in 6 months, then abandon it.
That's wonderful advice.